Welcome to another deep dive. You know, it's funny, being here in Memphis, Tennessee, surrounded by blues music and barbecue, you wouldn't think we'd be about to take a trip back to ancient Egypt.
Right.
But we are, and it all starts with a single name.
Oh, I like where this is going. A name.
Exactly. It's amazing how one name can be like a portal to another time and place. And that's what we're going to dive into today, the Berber roots of ancient Egypt.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where do we even begin?
Well, it all started for me with this book, L'Épopée berbère by Khelifa Mahieddine. I got to admit, when I first heard the premise, I was skeptical.
I can understand that. I mean, ancient Egypt often seems so self-contained, so unique.
Right. But Mahieddine, who's a lawyer, by the way, but clearly a history buff, he builds a really compelling case. And get this, his theories have actually been backed up by researchers like Jeanette Almasip at the CNRS.
Wow, the CNRS, that's the French National Center for Scientific Research, right?
Yes. So we're not just talking about fringe ideas here.
That's impressive. It's always exciting when someone's passion project, driven by genuine curiosity, gets that kind of recognition from the scientific community.
For sure. So let's unpack this a bit. Mahieddine starts by kind of challenging this traditional view of ancient Egypt as this isolated civilization along the Nile. He points to evidence like the discovery of hominids, early human ancestors in Ain Boucherit, Algeria.
Algeria, wow.
Yeah, and this site dates back millions of years to the very dawn of humanity.
That is incredible. So it really underscores the deep historical roots of North Africa, a history that, maybe we're only beginning to fully understand.
Totally. And Mahieddine connects this to the Sahara's desertification. Like he's suggesting that as this once fertile region dried up, people would have migrated towards the Nile.
Makes sense.
So we're talking about potential cultural exchange and interaction happening over millennia, not just some random connection.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, so how does he support this theory?
Well, that's where the real detective work begins, because Mahieddine uses language as his primary tool. He's like a linguistic archaeologist.
I like that, a linguistic archaeologist. So what does he uncover?
Well, he uncovers some really surprising links between the Berber language and ancient Egyptian. Like, for instance, take the Nile River. We all know it, right? But did you know that the name itself might not actually come from the Greek or Latin?
Wait, really?
Yeah, I always assumed it did too.
Yeah, me too.
But Mahieddine suggests that it could actually come from the Berber word il, which simply means river.
Huh. Il, river. It makes you wonder how many other words we use every day have such ancient origins.
Right, and it gets even more fascinating because he suggests that the Nile itself might actually be named after a river in Kabylie.
Kabylie?
Yeah, it's a region in Algeria with a strong Berber heritage.
Wow, okay. So the name of this iconic river flowing through the heart of ancient Egypt might actually have its roots in North Africa.
It's mind-blowing, and it gets even more personal for us here in Memphis.
Oh, you mean the name Memphis itself?
Yes. The original name, Menfer, or sometimes a Menfer, could actually mean hidden from the waters in Berber. And that meaning actually lines up with ancient accounts of the city's founding, which describe it being built on elevated land to avoid flooding.
So it's not just a cool-sounding name, it's a description, a reflection of the city's geography.
Exactly.
And we're not talking about vague myths here.
Yeah.
These accounts were recorded by, ancient historians like Manetho, giving them some real historical weight. It really is like each name is a puzzle piece, and Mahieddine is just showing us how they all fit together.
I love that analogy, and the connections just keep coming. Like Aswan, a city in southern Egypt, sounds a lot like Erzuin in Algeria.
Oh, interesting.
Both relate to the Berber word for drink.
It's like a trail of linguistic breadcrumbs leading us back to this ancient Berber influence.
Totally. And even the pharaohs' names contain clues.
Really? Like what?
The frequent use of Amen, which is often interpreted as a reference to the god Amun, could actually come from the Berber word for water.
Which makes total sense when you think about how crucial water was to ancient Egyptian civilization. It would be woven into everything, their language, their beliefs, everything.
Exactly. And even Akhenaten, the pharaoh who tried to introduce monotheism, might have a name with Berber roots.
Wow, I had no idea.
It's fascinating, right?
Uh-huh.
Anaki Adon translates to I am Adon, suggesting another layer of connection.
So we're seeing potential Berber influence in the names of rivers, cities, even the rulers of ancient Egypt. This is way more than just coincidence, right?
Right. This is where Mahieddine's expertise in toponymy, the study of place names, comes in. He's meticulously connecting these dots, tracing place names in Egypt back to similar-sounding places in North Africa, particularly Algeria, and then revealing their shared Berber origins.
It's like a historical treasure hunt.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I love how he isn't just throwing these connections out randomly. He's using rigorous linguistic analysis to build his case.
That's key. It gives his arguments weight. It makes you really pay attention.
Absolutely. And what makes it even more fascinating is that it challenges the traditional narrative of how ancient Egyptian civilization emerged. It's not just about influences from the South, but potentially from the West as well. We're talking about a much more complex and interconnected history than we might have imagined.
And that's just the beginning. Mahieddine dives into even deeper connections in the book, exploring other aspects of ancient Egyptian culture that hint at this Berber influence.
Right. And speaking of deeper connections, there's one area in particular that really caught my eye, and that's the ancient Egyptians' understanding of mathematics and astronomy. It's like they possessed knowledge that seemed to even predate the Greeks.
Oh, I'm definitely curious to hear more about that. Yeah, it's amazing. We often hear about ancient Egypt's monumental architecture, but we kind of forget about the intellectual achievements that made those monuments possible.
Right. Like when you think about it, building something like the Great Pyramid, it takes an incredible amount of knowledge and skill.
Absolutely. And Mahieddine, he points to the Great Pyramid as like a prime example of this advanced knowledge.
Okay, so help me out here for a second. I got to admit, math was never my strongest subject.
Sure, no problem.
When we talk about the Great Pyramid and its alignment with true north and those precise measurements, what does that tell us?
Well, it points to a deep understanding of mathematics and astronomy, like even the incorporation of mathematical constants like pi and phi.
Okay, now you're really losing me. Pi and phi, remind me.
No worries. So pi, remember that from school, it's that ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter.
Oh, right.
And phi, that's the golden ratio.
Golden ratio. Okay.
Yeah, and this is a proportion that appears repeatedly in nature, and it's associated with aesthetic beauty and harmony. You know, like the fact that these mathematical constants appear in the Great Pyramid's design suggests a level of sophistication that goes way beyond just like basic construction techniques.
So it's like they encoded this advanced mathematical knowledge into the very structure of the pyramid.
Precisely. And what's really intriguing is that Mahieddine suggests that this knowledge might actually predate the Greeks.
What?
Yeah. You know, we often credit the Greeks with these discoveries, but he's challenging the traditional timeline of scientific advancement. He's not saying that the Greeks didn't make important contributions, but, you know.
It's like a total rewriting of history. It makes you wonder what else we don't know. Like, could there be even more sophisticated mathematical systems hidden within ancient Egyptian architecture? Things we just haven't deciphered yet.
Exactly. And that's the question that Mahieddine kind of leaves us pondering. He doesn't have all the answers, but he presents a really compelling case for revisiting our assumptions about the intellectual capabilities of, like, these ancient civilizations, especially in light of these potential Berber connections.
It really is like we're looking at the same evidence, but with a new lens. And suddenly we're seeing things we never noticed before. And that brings up an important point, like how much of what we know about history is really shaped by the perspectives of those who wrote it.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the key questions that Mahieddine raises. And, for centuries, the study of ancient Egypt has been dominated by, like, Western scholars.
Mm-hmm.
And while their contributions have been invaluable, their perspectives inevitably influenced how they interpreted the evidence.
Sure.
Like, they might have overlooked or even downplayed connections to other cultures like the Berbers simply because it didn't fit within their existing framework.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but only focusing on a few pieces.
Yeah, you might miss the bigger picture.
Exactly. And what Mahieddine does so brilliantly is like he brings in those new pieces, those linguistic connections, those cultural parallels to create a more complete and, I think, a more nuanced understanding of ancient Egypt.
Absolutely. It's not about discrediting existing scholarship. It's about expanding it, incorporating these diverse perspectives to enrich our understanding. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so exciting. We're not just learning about ancient Egypt. We're challenging ourselves to see it in a new light, not as this isolated civilization, but as part of, like, this vast interconnected web of cultures that stretched across North Africa. Right. Yeah. And for you, our listener, this means that, like, the next time you see a picture of a pyramid or you hear about an archaeological discovery in Egypt, you'll have a whole new layer of understanding. You'll be able to appreciate the potential Berber influence woven into the very fabric of this ancient civilization.
It's almost like having a secret decoder ring for history. Right.
I like that. A secret decoder ring.
Wow, it's amazing. We've journeyed all the way from, Memphis, Tennessee, back to ancient Egypt.
Mhm.
And along the way, we've uncovered these mind-blowing connections to the Berber people of North Africa.
It really is like we've been on like an archaeological dig ourselves,
Yeah.
sifting through layers of language and history.
Right, to reveal these hidden connections. And you know what I think is so cool? This isn't just some dry academic exercise.
Yeah.
These connections actually make ancient Egypt feel more, I don't know, alive, more relatable.
I agree.
Like suddenly we're seeing the human faces behind those monuments and hieroglyphs.
Exactly, and that's what's so powerful about exploring history from multiple perspectives. Like, it challenges our assumptions and really enriches our understanding of the past.
For sure. So what's the takeaway for our listeners today? The next time you hear about Memphis or see those iconic images of the pyramids, you won't just be seeing ancient stones, right?
Right.
You'll be seeing a reflection of this vibrant Berber heritage
Yeah.
woven into the very fabric of ancient Egyptian civilization.
And you know, it's a reminder that history isn't static, it's dynamic, it's evolving. As we uncover new evidence, new perspectives, like those presented by Mahieddine, our understanding of the past continues to grow.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening for me. It's like we've only just scratched the surface of these Berber connections.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a book like L'Épopée Berbère. It's like a starting point, an invitation to keep exploring, to question what we think we know, and to delve deeper into these fascinating historical connections.
If you're at all intrigued by the ideas we've discussed today, I highly recommend checking out Mahieddin's book. It's really a journey of discovery that might just challenge everything you thought you knew about ancient Egypt.
And I think, for me, the biggest takeaway is this. If a civilization as seemingly well known as ancient Egypt can be re-examined and even reinterpreted in light of these Berber connections, what other hidden stories are waiting to be told?
Right. What other historical narratives are just waiting to be revised?
Exactly. It's a good reminder that history is full of surprises and there's always more to discover.
So keep asking questions, keep exploring, and who knows what fascinating connections you might uncover. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Berber roots of ancient Egypt.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, keep learning and keep questioning.